Welcome to Shades of Black, Inside the Black Vote, Part 2. I'm Christopher Norris, WHYY's community contributors and engagement editor. In this episode, we will continue to explore the motivations and expectations of black voters. We are joined again by Kenny Cooper, WHYY suburban reporter, James Williams, publisher of the Uptown Standard newspaper, Jasmine Sessions, founder of She Can Win, and Emma Tramble, founder of My Family Votes. My illustrious panel is back and ready for another round of great conversation. Thank you all for joining me. Emma and Jasmine, I'd like to start with you guys. In the terms of both imagery and initiative, what do you think will be the short-term and long-term impact of Kamala Harris's presidency on black women and girls?
First of all, you can't really tell us black girls nothing right now, especially if you are in a sorority, AKA like myself, and especially if you went to an HBCU like myself. We are on cloud nine, but it's so much bigger than that, than just being a black girl in a sorority that goes to an HBCU. It's about representation matters. I'll tell you a very quick story. My 6-year-old comes in. Obviously, she knows that Kamala Harris is our vice president. She said, "Mom, I could be president." If you go on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram and put in the hashtag my VP looks like me, you will see a whole slew of little black girls and black women that are wearing that t-shirt, holding that sign, because it's a sense of pride. For so long, we have been shut out of the system. For so long, we have been left away from the table. And as Shirley Chisholm said, bring your folding chair. Well, not only did Kamala bring the folding chair, she brought the whole table. Okay, the table, black women have been the table for so long. America is just now catching up and starting to, quote unquote, validate us. But we didn't need that validation. You understand me, Chris? Emma, I see you shaking your head. You get it. We didn't need their validation because we've been door knocking, we've been voting, we've been bringing our mamas, cousins, sisters, husbands to the polls with us. America is just catching up. It means so much to see that African-American woman who is sitting in the second highest office in the land, and it lets us know we can do it. You guys now see that we can do it, and we are now demanding our rightful place at the table to change laws, make laws, vote, lead organizations, turn states blue or red, whatever we feel, because black people are not a monolith, and especially black women. So having that symbol, and again, Kamala's going to do the work. She is not just a symbolic leader. She is going to do the work because black women lead and black women get it done. But Chris, it means the world right now in 2021 to have a woman that looks like us sitting in the second highest office in the land. Again, my VP looks like me.
Emma?
So for me, because I talk to people on all different sides of how they feel about Kamala Harris and her victory. One of the things that I would like to see us do, which we tend not to do if we like candidates, is first we need to celebrate, like Jasmine's saying. You know, people had their pearls and chucks and whatever else they had going on. We need to start educating people about issues, and then we need to agitate. So no matter the fact that our VP looks like us, if there's an issue on the table that impacts black people, and we need to know, you got our back, right? So whatever that means, whether she's an advocate or black women have to push. So it's an opportunity for us to be joyful and us to be, strong in our different ways. So if we have to push, we will push. If we have to pull, we will pull. And if we have to lift up, we will lift up. But this is an opportunity for us to say, no matter who's in the White House, no matter who is the vice president, we are going to demand what we need. So it's a wonderful opportunity for black girls to see, like, oh, we can even disagree with our vice president, but we still will respect her. And so I think it's an opportunity to do a lot of things. I'd like to see that because a lot of what I have been witnessing throughout the years is if a candidate looks like us or an office holder looks like us, we don't tend to hold them accountable as much. You're like, oh, well, it happened a lot during the Obama administration. we're like, well, what could he have done? It's like, you know what? Look what Donald Trump did. He used his position as a bully pulpit. And that's what we need more.
So, can I just jump in
Oh,
really quick?
please, absolutely.
I actually disagree with you, Emma. I think we are harder on Black legislators
Uh-oh.
than what we are our white counterparts. Literally, I can't tell you how many times I've heard Obama did nothing for Black people. I can't tell you how many times I go to City Hall and they are side-eyeing not every Black council person, every Black state legislator, because they always say, well, how are you not getting such and such, such and such, such and such done, in a laundry list of things, right? And I do feel like we hold our Black elected officials at a much higher standard than what we do our white ones. We claim onus to them, and we want them to only be our legislator. And I had a conversation not too long ago about the Obama administration, and I said, he wasn't a president just for Black people. He was president for all people, right? So when you say he hasn't done much for Black people, well, let's look at his overall track record and see what he has done. I think we are actually a lot harder on our Black elected officials, and that's coming from someone that helps Black women get elected. If you could see my inbox, you would be appalled at the things that we say about our Black women elected officials. I mean, truly just appalled.
Right. I think it's a combination. If that were so in Philly, a lot of our elected officials would be white, right? There have been a lot of white candidates going up against people who've been in office for decades, and they are not winning, right? So it's not just that I think a lot of politicians take a lot of grief, but I think it depends on who you're talking to. Some people love their state senator. They do anything for their state senator. And there are others who want them out of office as soon as possible. So voters are quite nuanced, and there are some that are angry because of a particular issue, and they feel like gentrification is a big one. That a lot of Black voters are like, you're just letting these developers run roughshod over us. But when you run again, I'm going to vote for you.
This is an interesting conversation point, Emma, that you and Jasmine have brought up, and I want to bring Kenny and James into the conversation as well. James, respond to what you've heard. I mean, are we too hard on our Black officials, or are we not hard enough?
I think we're way too hard on our Black elected officials.
Wow.
And look, from working campaigns and from working in City Hall, and even from running a newspaper right now, with which I do, I see it all the time. And I talk to a lot of Black elected officials, especially here in the Northwest section of Philadelphia. Right? And we're very hard on them, right? But the segue on that, the reason why we don't see a lot more white elected officials, even though we are, let's say, upset with our Black officials, is because the numbers don't support white officials getting elected in Philadelphia, right? The numbers don't support it. We're a city that's 44% African American, and to add that, the majority of your super voters are coming from the majority from the Northwest, which is an African American stronghold, right? So just go with a number. Since 1950, the 50th ward and the 10th ward is determined who's the mayor of Philadelphia, right? So if you can't crack that fortress, if you can't crack that line, then it doesn't matter, right? Even if you look in South Philadelphia with Keada Johnson, I mean, you would think he would have a lot harder time to get elected, but no, he's not, because the demographics support him. But here's the thing. We always hold our own people more accountable, and we should, right? We should, because we put them in there, right? Because they wouldn't have won without the Black vote. If you think Keada Johnson is getting votes on the other side of Broad Street, outside of the 48th ward and the 36th ward and the 30th ward, and you think he's getting votes over in Passyunk and near Geno Stakes, you're crazy. You can look at the numbers and the supports and shows you where he wins, right? If you look at Jim Kenney's election, you can see where he won. He didn't win in the white neighborhoods. He won because the Black elected officials in the Northwest, the Sherelle Parkers, the Marion Tascos, the Cindy Basses, all got behind him, right? The Rosita Youngbloods, they pushed him across the finish line. The Black vote in Philadelphia determines everything. So we therefore should hold them more accountable, because we're the ones putting them in there.
Emma, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that, but I'd just like to bring Kenny into and have him a chance to say, Kenny, should we be holding our Black politicians to a higher standard because they get a big portion of the Black vote?
Speaking as someone that's a resident of Montgomery County, I can't necessarily speak to Philadelphia in and of itself, just because I'm not a resident of Philadelphia. But to kind of speak on that about holding someone more or less accountable, I don't think that we should hold them more or less accountable. Like, I think that we should hold them equally accountable as they would their white counterparts or their Latinx counterparts or whomever. I just think that at the end of the day, kind of to thread the needle that Jasmine and Emma were both talking about is the importance of representation, but also the limitations of it. I was young when Obama was elected, and I kind of reaped the benefits of having a Black man as the president of the United States, and I've reaped the benefits of the representation. But at the same time, to kind of thread the needle that Emma was talking about is after, like, as I was growing up and I got more educated on issues and all those things like that, you kind of have to kind of stop yourself, you have to kind of stop yourself as letting representation carry the entire torch. Like, there has to be some substance behind it. And ultimately, that's ultimately what it is. It's the balance between representation mattering and also getting some things done. And also being a civics lesson about the limitations of federal government, how much an individual one seat can do. That's ultimately what it is. And for some voters, they don't know that there's a checks and balances that happen behind the scenes, and that this congressperson can only get one thing done. They're only one vote. This council member can only get one thing done if they're if they're facing opposition. Whether you're in the Senate chamber or you're in the House of Representatives, there are limitations to what you can do. And ultimately, that's what happens. It's those three things: realizing the benefits of representation, its limitations, becoming responsive and being an agitator, and also at the end of the day, just understanding that it's ultimately a civics lesson growing up, that there are limitations to what individual elected leaders can do.
Emma, 60 seconds. I have a few other questions I want to get to. 60 seconds to respond.
So the numbers and the political sentiment is shifting in Philly. The data says it. There are also wards that are up and coming. First Ward, 46th Ward, shout out, because I live in the 46th, are moving, and they are not necessarily dominated by Black voters, but Black voters either are plurality, and Black voters are shifting. They are tired of party politics, business as usual, and candidates who have been doing business as usual should be starting to be afraid of the primaries and parties like the Working Family Party in the general.
I appreciate that. According to a CNN exit poll, 36% of Democratic voters, 36% of Democratic voters ranked racial inequality as their #1 issue, followed by the coronavirus at 27%. My question to you, starting with James, what are some of the core issues that motivated you to the polls in 2020, and what are the core issues that motivate you to the polls in general?
Okay, so 2020, it was a little different for me. I was a history major in college, right? And my concentration was Nazi Germany. And I saw too many parallels of this administration's and what I was learning about fascism, but more importantly about the rise of Hitler, and that was what motivated me. It wasn't the policies. I mean, at the end of the day, a mop could have ran against Trump for me. I saw a leader who was going to become a fascist. And I tell people that if you think he had a hard time leaving office now, do you think it was going to be hard for him to leave in 8 years? Do you think it would have been in 8 years he wouldn't have lost? He would have. I mean, he would have lost, but he would have had to leave. But he would have stayed in. And being a part. And I didn't delete all my Republican friends off of social media when I left the party. I still keep them on my page. They did a study. I talked to Politico in 2016, and they asked me how many people do I know who support Trump, and I said uniquely on my social media page one day I clicked the Hillary Clinton page, right, and half of my friends were following Hillary Clinton, and half of my friends was following Donald Trump, right? So I knew I had right there, I was in the middle. So my Facebook feed was telling me a lot. And I could see the Trump supporters realizing that they didn't want a president, they wanted a king, right? They wanted a king. So therefore, it was more important for me to see him lose because of that. It wasn't about policy at all. I mean, I've always liked Joe Biden. My family's from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, so I would always ride through Delaware. One of the first billboards I ever saw was a Joe Biden billboard. back in the early 80s, so I've always been aware of Joe Biden and who he is. But I saw something different in this election compared to anything else I've ever saw in the course of American history. I mean, we were approaching a point that Italy went through with Mussolini. We were approaching a point that Germany went through with Hitler, and the similarities were just too close to me that it was more so this was about the democracy and not about who's going to be president. And that's what drove me to the polls. And I began to energize and organize my friends in that way. But the main thing I talked to my close friends were about, like, hey, it's not about your vote. You also need to donate to these candidates, and all of my friends donated Joe Biden. All of my friends, we live in Philadelphia. We're all from the 50th Ward. They all donated to AOC. We donated across the country to different politicians, and we did it in an organized fashion because we wanted to make sure that we thought Lindsey Graham was going to lose, but we donated to Jamie. We donated across the board. We got on the phone. We talked to our friends and our family members from other states to donate, not just to vote, but also to donate. Because if Trump won, we needed a Democrat Senate and a Democrat House.
Thank you for that. And just for our viewers, AOC is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Jasmine, what about you? What motivated you to go to the polls in 2020?
The same thing that has motivated me since I've been 18. People that look like me could not vote. People died for me to be able to vote. I have been voting with my parents. They used to take me to the polls. My Nana used to take me to the polls. Voting is just in me. It would feel weird not to vote. So, but I'll flip the question because, I was going to vote regardless. So, you know what I mean? Like, people died for my right to vote. I would never not vote. That is just disrespectful. My parents grew up in a time where Black people could not vote. So, I just want to make that very, very clear. But what motivated me to get others and really organize, not just here in Philly, but across our Commonwealth, was this election just felt different. It truly felt like we were fighting for the democracy. And I know how dramatic that sounds, but it really felt like democracy was dying under the weight of the Trump administration. And me, as a person that has a platform and has a voice, I could not organize others. I could not do what I was supposed to do or what I was allowed to do or what was in my power to do to organize and turn out the vote. That's truly what motivated me to go to Pittsburgh, to go to Erie, to go to Allentown, because it's not comfortable for Black people out there. It does not look like us. They are not friendly to us because, let's be clear, Pennsylvania is like pretty much red. It didn't matter to me though. I was going to door knock safely, lit drop safely, because it felt so important, more so than any other election I've ever participated in. This election literally felt like life and death. And look what happened on January 6th. Life and death actually happened. We actually fought for the democracy. So there was no sitting at home or not turning out the vote for me. That just was not an option.
I appreciate that. Kenny Cooper, what motivated you to the polls in 2020? And was sitting it out an option for you?
I can't sit out, kind of like what Jasmine was saying. Voting is kind of in me. My mom, my dad, I've gone to vote with them since I was able to go vote with them. I may not have gone necessarily inside the booth, but I was definitely in the car during those trips to go vote. And being someone that just graduated from college in May and has kind of been working and living from home, my mom made sure to wake me up bright and early on election day. When I say bright and early, I mean 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow, God bless her.
To kind of be ready to vote. And sure enough, that's what I went to go do. So I guess at this point, it's kind of like a reflex. Voting is like a reflex. Now, in terms of the issues, kind of like what everyone was saying, it's just the moment that we're living in, of course. You can't kind of turn down the ability to kind of have an impact on one of the most consequential elections in American history. So at the end of the day, that's also what happened. And speaking from someone that's kind of in my generation as a very young voter, there was a comment that I saw a lot of young people making during the time that kind of stuck with me. And it was just talking about how like the kids that were like actual kids when Trayvon Martin was shot and killed, they are now voters now. And for some of them, even though my first election was back in, I want to say 2018, was it 2016, 2018? I can't remember which election I first voted in. I believe it was 2016. But yeah, 2016, that was my first election. But for some others that were younger, this was their first election. So I think those are the things that kind of stick in people's minds, is that there are these very recent events, and for young people that have kind of clung to those events as their kind of first political awakening, their first thing to kind of get them involved with, whether it be politics or the activism behind politics. This election was kind of the catalyst, or not the catalyst, the culmination of all those things that we've been seeing in the news over the past 8 years.
I appreciate that. Emma, I imagine it was the same for you, the need to save democracy?
Well, democracy has needed saving for quite some time. I just think it became more obvious with this election. One of the things is, I think we take for granted, for me, when we talk about our ancestors, is our ancestors were very strategic voters, right? They were, like my family has been in Pennsylvania since the late 1800s. So they were part of like that really early migration. And so they've been voting for a very long time. And one of the things is that we can't just use that our ancestors voted, so you should vote, because it doesn't seem real, right? And we have to make everything real. And I think it got really real for people this year. But that doesn't mean it's sustainable. And so for me, I've struggled. I mean, I work in the industry where I get people out to vote, where 2016, I was like, would it matter if I didn't vote for president? And there are a lot of voters like me who vote all the time, who are questioning, and not all teenagers, just turning 18 or 1825, that's the demographic everybody talks about. A lot of older voters need to be motivated. And we need to not just be motivated out of fear. We need to be moving towards something big. Like Make America Great is an aspirational phrase. It means different things to different people. We got to come up on the other side with something bold and big, and to keep us moving to those goals. So for me, one of the other things was judges. The power of the federal bench is frightening. Not just the Supreme Court, but how the district courts, how they kept weighing in on the election stuff and evictions. And I was like, if they had made that clear in 2016, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So we definitely, it's wonderful. Let's celebrate everybody. But we can't just be reacting out of fear. We have got to put some might behind our vote.
That's a powerful statement, Emma. I appreciate that. We only have a few minutes left, and I'd like to go around, starting with Jasmine, and ask just a very simple question. Given what we see going on in the world as it pertains to racial injustice, police brutality, gentrification, the kind of injustices we decry as Black voters all the time, what keeps you motivated? What gives you hope? That's the same question we're going to end on, starting with you, Jasmine. What gives you hope?
My babies give me hope. We got to keep fighting. I got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, 2 little brown girls, and every day they give me hope to make our country a better place for them. I do not want them to go through the same struggles that I went through. So people like Emma, James, and Kenny are just so important and so vital to the system. And I just want to say to each and every one of you, I see you. I know how hard you guys are working, and I am just so appreciative of each of you. Thank you for making a better place for Jay and Jace.
Wow. Kenny.
I think what gives me hope is kind of looking around at, kind of like what Jasmine was saying, kind of looking around at everyone and just knowing how hard they work to kind of keep us in play at this moment. And I think also kind of like looking around at my peers and just knowing how active they are in voting and all those things and activism and different types of issues, whether it be criminal justice reform or immigrants' rights and issues like that and advocacy. I think that's what kind of gives me hope, is the fact that people are put so much on the line and dedicate so much time to solving these would feel like impossible issues to solve, would feel like issues that we've been talking about for years and years and years at a time, when I was just sitting down as a kid, just like watching the news and they'd be arguing about the same issues that my friends are just getting kind of involved with now. So I think that's what gives me hope. And also just kind of looking around at my community at large. I mean, I live in Montgomery County, and Montgomery County is mostly white. And kind of just seeing places for the first time engage in protests and activism is shocking. Now, that may be kind of bare minimum thinking, just saying, oh, like about time. That's kind of the gist that I got from some residents that I spoke to about kind of unlikely places engaging in protest. But ultimately, it can be like you can think about time, but also just kind of revel in the moment, like, wow, like for the first time in what feels like forever, a lot of people have finally taken notice to the issues going on.
Thank you for that, Kenny. James Williams and then Emma. We have about 60 seconds left. What gives you hope?
Well, you know, I was raised by my grandma. I mean, both parents in the house, but my grandma was here. She was born in the early 1900s and on the eastern shore of Maryland. And she moved to Philadelphia because of everything that was happening in Maryland. And I just believe that we are an evolving country and we continue to evolve. And it's very important for everyone to do their part to help the evolution. We've changed so much in the last 100 years, just, you know, from where we've come as a country now, and especially as Black people, to where we're at today, right? And I'm hopeful because of the fact that I've seen so many great leaders over time come up, and I just think everybody has their part to do to continue the ball rolling. Like we're like a juggernaut, right? Like, and once a juggernaut starts rolling, it can't stop. But the juggernaut always has to have something to build energy off of, right? So people like us are the energy. Like people like us are the energy that keeps that juggernaut rolling. And I'm just glad to do my part to be part of the system to help other people get involved and get motivated so that we can keep that juggernaut moving.
Thank you so much. Emma Tramble, you have the last words.
I'm hopeful because people are hungry for information about how they can make a difference at every price point, and every age. And it's exciting to see intergenerational work. And I just want us to stay fired up and just keep moving. Every election is important, whether it's the dog catcher all the way up to the president.
I appreciate that. Kenny Cooper is a graduate of Temple University and currently serving as WHYY suburban reporter. James Williams is the publisher of the Uptown Standard newspaper and a former member of the GOP. Emma Tramble is a community and voter engagement strategist who founded My Family Votes. And Jasmine Sessions is the owner and founder of She Can Win. You guys are the real deal, and I appreciate you taking the time to join this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Shades of Black, Inside the Black Vote. If you have thoughts and commentary about the topics we covered on the program, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at talkback@whyy.org. This conversation is just getting started. Until next time, for WHYY, I'm Christopher Norris. Goodbye. This program is a part of Your Democracy, an initiative funded by the Sutherland Family Foundation.